Hi, Michael Bettine here, once again for It's Cuppa Time. And today I want to delve a little deeper into recording your gongs and bowls and bells and other assorted instruments. I've had some people ask some questions after my last videos on recording, so I wanted to address some of those ideas and really show you some examples of mic setups and what we are going to do. First thing, we'll look at using an all-in-one digital recorder. An all-in-one like my Zoom H6. It has built-in XY microphones. For many of us, this is how we will record, either for personal use or at home or our studio, so we can listen back to what we're doing, or recording our sessions. And something like this too can be used as an interface to go into your computer if you are recording live, like onto YouTube or Facebook or something. Let's look at the mic setup first. We'll get real close here. XY is where the two mics are crossed over, and one mic is picking up the left side, one is picking up the right side, depending on which way you're looking at it. This first illustration shows two microphones crossed over, one atop the other. That's one way to do an XY. The second illustration shows two microphones on the same level where the capsule ends are almost touching. Both will work. A lot depends on what type of a setup you have as far as mic holders and things like that. But that is a typical XY microphone setup. So typically with something like this, it's a fixed position. We've got an all-in-one unit. I've got bowls on a table here. These are some metal bowls. They could be crystal bowls. This could be down at floor level or up on a table. Makes no difference. It's the same sort of idea. If you're at floor level, you might use a much lower stand, like a floor-mounted stand, or have a boom arm that's pointing down instead of pointing up. The first thing we need to do is, especially if we're recording at home, is just experiment. I would say for a setup like this with the bowls here, I want to be a little up above the bowls. And if I'm just recording bowls, a bowl setup, instruments on the ground or a table like this, I'd want to be a little above and pointing down, sort of like this, not straight on, but maybe pointing down a bit. And I can see here, I'm probably about a foot above. Now we can experiment as far as the distance. When we are recording drums, grab another mic here. When we are recording drums in the studio, the big thing you have to realize is the difference between recording pop and rock and modern music like that versus recording acoustic music like this. We have to approach this much more like we were recording a string quartet, a symphony orchestra, an acoustic guitar, anything like that, as opposed to we're trying to record a rock band. Now if we can imagine this is a drum here, in a rock band, they're going to stick the microphone right here, right on top of the drum. Now, we never listen to a drum like this. For one, it's going to blow our eardrum out. And for two, that's pretty much an artificial sound up this close. And if we use it for a bowl like this, it's just, we're not going to get the tone we want. What we want when we are recording all these instruments, gongs, bowls, bells, and such, we want to hear the air. We want to hear the sound moving through the air, hear those air molecules moving before it hits the microphone. That's an important difference between recording like a rock band, where they stick the microphones right up to the amplifier, right up to, if this is a speaker, they got that microphone right up there, and the guitar or the bass or whatever. Drums, again, generally the drums themselves are marked really close. They'll have some overheads to pick up the cymbals and an overall sound of the drum set. And then even after that, everything is so heavily processed. The drums might also have triggers that are triggering additional drum sounds, or after the fact, they can replace the drum sounds that they've recorded. Like if they go, I don't like that snare drum, they can put in a whole different snare drum. And then there's all the effects. You have EQs, compressors, gates, a whole range of effects put on the microphones for the drums or guitars and that. So what we're creating, in essence, is really an artificial sound. If you were to go into the recording studio and stand by the drum set and the drummer goes down and plays the drums and you hear that, then you go into the recording studio itself, into the control room, and listen over the speakers. It's going to be a completely different sound. Because that's the way rock and pop and country and hip hop and all those sort of recordings are. The sounds that you hear of drums and electric guitars and bass and keyboards and that are usually so heavily processed. Even the vocals are so processed and multi-tracked and things. If you were to stand in the studio listening to the singer sing and then again playback, go into the control room, it's going to be completely different. So we have to approach what we are doing like an acoustic instrument, because that's what it is, whether it's a crystal bowl, a metal bowl, a gong, or such. We have to approach it, like I said, like we're recording a string quartet, a violin, a cello, recording a trumpet, an oboe, acoustic guitar, a banjo, a small contemporary ensemble, or a large orchestra. And what we want, again, we want that air. So if I take our digital recorder here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make test recordings. For me, this is a tool I use all the time in my studio. It's a tape measure. I'm kind of nerdy about stuff, but I will do that. I'll take, okay, here's the end of the table. And I'll say 1 foot, and I'll mark it, and I'm going to play. I put my, here, we'll get a stand here. I say, okay, I'll put my recorder here, and I'll put the mic a foot away. And then I'll record maybe half a minute of that. Then I'll go back and I'll move it. And let's try 2 feet away. Boom, here we go. Let's move that mic back. Okay, now we're 2 feet from it. Boom. Make another recording. 30 seconds, maybe a minute at the most. And then maybe I'll go, okay, let's go 3 feet, 4 feet. I'll try that. And I might also do the same thing, but different heights. Say, yeah, let's get a little more height on here. So I put it up. This has got to be about, what, 5 feet or so. Let's see. It's just a little over 5 feet. Actually, the mic capsules are at 5 feet. There you go. I guess I know my measurements. So this is a thing I will do and experiment with the placement in the room. And then go back and critically listen to each one of those takes. And listen for various things. How clean everything sounds. Most importantly, how natural it sounds. And then I'm listening for that sort of thing you can't really pin down, but the air. How does it sound in the space? I'll listen over my monitor speakers. I'll also listen on headphones. For me, that's the important thing. I'm playing acoustic instruments. I want the recording to sound like I'm hearing it right here when I'm playing everything. So I'll do that. I'll move, my source, whether it's a digital recorder or it's a pair of microphones, I will move it around and find where I like the sound the best. So that's studio type recording. And I'll find that optimum place. I'll write it down. I have a notebook. I keep charts on things. Again, I'll use my measuring tape and measure things. Sometimes I'll even mark the floor of my studio with tape so I can put the stand in the same place. The legs are in the same place. And even with the table, maybe the table legs are in the same place. So if I'm moving things around and I want to go back to that same setup, boom, I can just put everything in the same spot and I know where I am. Let's lower this down a little bit. So that's what I do in a more controlled environment here, like in my studio. And it's the same thing if I'm using separate microphones, like a pair of small diaphragm condensers here. I could put them in an XY configuration. I could put them more in what's an ORTF or NOS configuration. Now we are looking at the ORTF versus the NOS microphone setup. The ORTF is coming from the French television and radio. And the capsules are 17 centimeters apart. The idea here is to simulate the human head and the distance between our ears, sort of a typical distance. I like using this a lot for stereo recordings. I like the wider soundstage than you get with an XY setup, but that's just personal preference. The second one is the NOS, which is the Dutch television and radio setup. And it takes the ORTF and spreads it out a little wider, putting the capsules at 30 centimeters apart, slightly different angle. My setup in the studio for my videos here is a little between both of those, owing to the size of my studio and the height of the microphones and that. I played around to find what to me was the optimum setup and the optimum sound for how things work in my studio. As in most things audio, there are no fixed rules. It always comes down to what works in every situation. So mic setups and mic placement are really variable. It's often just experimenting until you find what sound works best for you. I can do a spaced pair where it's an A-B. Now the A-B setup is what they call a spaced pair. And again, that can vary as far as how wide you space them. Well, we're talking about a set of like crystal bowls or singing bowls, either on the floor or the table. You want to spread them apart enough that you are covering both sides. I wouldn't go out to the end of each setup, far right, far left, but you want to have enough space in there that you're going to get some stereo separation and that you'll be able to hear that. And it should give you a nice sound stage. Again, it's the type of thing to experiment with. Try it one way, then maybe move the mics a little further apart or a little closer together. Try it there. Compare them. Find what works best for what you are doing in your setup, and especially what room you are in. That's always the important thing, to experiment. Often on bowls, if I've got separate mics and I've got a setup like this, I'll also try different mic techniques. I happen to like ORTF. I think it gets a wider sound stage when I'm listening. And I like to use that, and I'll have the ORTF. I'll put links to all these mic positions down below. I will have that out here more, up in the air. And basically the mics I have for my videos right up here are in a NOS, which is a little wider variation than ORTF. NOS configuration right up here above, so they pick everything up. But if I'm recording out here, I like to get back a little further. XY is pretty good for more close up, but if I like to get back, again, for me, what's real important is getting that air. I want to get that room sound. Now my studio is very dry. Any ring you hear are the gongs reacting to my claps, but you can hear it's a fairly dry studio. And you can tell when I'm talking here. I like the dryness, which allows me to control the sound. But I like to get back, often like 6 feet, so I'm like way back here by the camera with my mic set up. As I said, you can do the XY, you can do the NOS or ORTF, you can do the spaced pair or AB. Now if I'm recording a setup like bowls like this, I might want an AB to give me a nice wide stereo, and it's kind of get a mic on one side and a mic on the other side. And these are things that, again, I might experiment with. Try this mic position, make a couple different recordings, possibly at different distances. Try a different mic position, make a couple of recordings at different distances, things like that. And then go back and listen and find out, which one that I like for what I'm doing at the time. And over time, if you keep a notebook, and you might keep your measurements and your ideas and thoughts on how the sound is, you build up knowledge of what to do in your own place, your own studio. And it might even be repositioning things too. I mean, I might take this and put it over here instead. And depending on the shape of your studio and things like that, there might be a more optimum place to set your gear to record it. So initially, it just takes a lot of work to find these ideas out. But once you do, you find what works for you. And I've pretty much nailed down how I like to do things here in my studio. And I just go to record, and I know where to put everything and how to set it. I know the settings for the volumes and things like that because I've been doing it so much here in the exact same place. Now, if I was to take all this and go into a different room, that changes everything. I might start with what I'm used to working with and listen to it and see if it gives me the same sort of quality that I'm used to, the same sound, the same ambience that I've been getting. If it does, I'll stick with it. If it doesn't, I'll go, I gotta move a little different. Maybe move in closer, maybe move up a little higher with the mics, a little further, maybe a little different mic pattern. Oh, this would be better maybe with an XY. Okay, we'll try that. A lot of experimenting. And there's no shortcuts if you want a quality recording. You can just throw it up anywhere you want, your mics, and record and go with that. That's fine, especially if you're just recording for yourself, for your own reference, so you can hear what's going on. Maybe you're practicing things, you want to listen back to hear how they're going. Rhythmic things, other things. then that's fine, because you're not so much going for the quality as you're just going for a reference take that you can listen to and figure out what you're doing. But if you're looking for an actual quality take to release, like on the internet or something, to stream, then you might want to put in a little more time to get more of an optimum sound, at least what sounds good to you. Now, if you're playing live, generally changes the whole thing. Live, I often would have people right here, so I'm not going to have my recorder or my external mics right here. And I don't want to put everything way up here because it's too close. So in that case, I'm in the back of the room. And when you play live, you don't have a lot of time. I usually get there, I unload the van, haul the stuff in, start setting up. I've got so much time. I like to allow at least an hour if possible, so I could set everything up, check it out, get my recording gear set up, check it out, and then have some time to just rest. I don't want to be like hustling and getting everything going, and then it's like, okay, it's already go, and I have to start the session. I like to have maybe 10, 15 minutes to just take it easy. Sit down, have a drink, meditate a little, get my headspace going for the session. When you're playing live and recording in a room, you just do the best you can. That's all you really can do. I try to get, it's a bigger room. I try to get the mics up in the air, depending on how high the ceiling is. I find that for me, I think if I get up in the air, part of it, I get a little further away from the people and their noises and fumblings and all that. I like to get the mics more up in the air. If I can get it up even 7 feet, 8 feet, that can be nice. But I like to at least kind of get it up head level here. So it's like, if I'm standing here listening, this is what it's going to sound like. And then I just try to find a place in the back of the room where nobody's going to bump into the mic stand, where we're not going to get, noise or wiggle or things like that. Hopefully where nobody's like right there, so if they're breathing or snoring or talking, that it's not going to be picked up. So you just try to find an unobtrusive place in the room, as far back as you can get maybe, and then adjust it from there. The hard part is, because you're a one person doing this, you can't be like, okay, I'll play and then I'll look at my levels and adjust it. You kind of guess at your levels, and you learn that over time. Now with my new recorder, the Tascam X8, I did buy the Bluetooth adapter, so I do have an app on my phone and my iPad. So I can have my phone sitting on my stick tray next to me. I can be playing, I can be looking at the phone and seeing what the levels are. Then I can go over, I can adjust the levels, play some more, see what the levels are. That was one of the reasons I bought that recorder. I love the Zoom here. H6, I've had it for 7.5 years. It's never failed me. I've probably made 1,000 recordings with this. It's a great unit, and it still is. But I got tired of guessing and under guessing. The benefit of this one, you can have it record a safety track that is, I believe, 12 dB louder than where you set it. So if your levels are too hot, you can use the safety recording, which should be not clipping like the other one. So that's been nice about this. But I like the idea that I can use the Bluetooth. I can do a sound check by myself, set my levels, and I can also turn it on and off via my phone from right where I am. I don't have to run to the back of the room. No matter what type of recorder you have, it could be a small one like an H1N, it could be any sort of Tascam, Zoom, other sort of digital recorder. Or you can have your setup with a computer and an interface and a couple of external mics, however you want to do it. Yeah, when you're playing live, you're at the mercy of the room and how the people are set up. There are some places where I have to set off to the side more to be out of the way. And like maybe there's a pillar or something. I find pillars are great places to set your stand in front of because that helps guard them from people either tripping on them or bumping into them when they're laying on the floor, because people aren't going to set up like, they're going to give that pillar some space. They're going to set up around it. So sometimes I have to do that. If there's a pillar over here, I'll put my mic there as opposed to straight on. So we have to make adjustments playing live. And like I said, it's just going with what you can. Now, if you consistently play in the same room, obviously you could more dial in your sound. 2-3 times in the same room, you could try different things. Like the first time you're there, you set it up and you do this, and then you listen back and you go, yeah, that's okay. Maybe if I was just a little closer or a little higher or something, or if I could get this or that, get the volume up just a bit more. That's an advantage. If you play the same room consistently, you can learn where your optimum spot to record from is, and you learn the acoustics of the room. How does that room sound? Obviously, if you're going into a brand new place you've never been in, it's just luck. You put your mic or your recorder where you think it's best and set your levels, and good luck, and hope that you get a decent recording. Now, again, if you're doing this for personal reference, just so you can know, hey, how did that session sound? I was going to try some new ideas. How did they come across? Things like that. That's fine. You're not looking for the ultimate high quality. But if you're looking for doing a live stream from a place or something that you want to release on streaming or something, yeah, you're going to try to get the best recording you can. Now, as far as doing live recordings, it really helps if you can have another person to do the recording and to do the levels, to listen to it, like over headphones while you're doing it, and they can adjust things for you, and they can make sure that while you're streaming, everything is fine. Otherwise, it's whatever happens. It's the Wild West out there. You just set it up and turn it on, and you go, hi, I'm on Facebook Live. I'm going to play tonight, and, it's like, good luck. Hopefully everything turns out. But if you can recruit another person in there, hopefully somebody who knows something about audio and recording and things like that, that helps immensely. Okay, so this is just some basic ideas. And like I said, the big thing, if you're recording at home or in your studio, your bedroom, your living room, wherever your stuff is at, move your recorder, move your mics around, do some little tests, see where it sounds best to you, and then note that down and go with it. If you're playing live, you just got to find the best place that's out of the way so things don't get knocked into, knocked over, bumped, things like that. And you do the best you can. All right? Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next cup of time.